Hello, everyone. This is Rick Mercer, the Communications Manager for the town of Garner. And we are here with another one of our occasional episodes of the Garner's Station podcast. You can get this wherever you get your podcast by just searching Garner Station. Some of y'all check out our episodes on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Town of Garner. I am really happy and proud that we are able to have with us today Mary D. Williams, who is an adjunct professor at Duke University's Center for Documentary Studies. And Mary is a resident of Garner, longtime resident, born and raised. Is that right, Mary?
Yeah, we moved to Garner when I was 6. So yeah, I lived on Jones Sausage Road.
Great. So, I'm really happy to have a chance to talk to you today. I know a little bit about your work, and we're going to talk a lot about it. But this is exciting. So let's go into it. You travel the country as a performer and a teacher. You have been teaching one course in particular through Duke's Center for Documentary Studies. You team teach with Dr. Timothy Tyson. We're going to talk about that. And so there's lots to talk about. Let's get into it. Tell us a bit about your background in music, starting from when you were really young.
Sure. Well, first of all, Rick, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you. It's an honor to be with you today and your audience members. I'm very excited to be, as they say, a Garnerarian since I grew up here. So Jones Sausage Road is where I grew up, and it's just I had a wonderful childhood because there were so many teachers that live on that road, so that impacted my life. So, but growing up, my parents, John and Ellen Dobbin, my brother who passed away 8 years ago now, we grew up on Jones Sausage and rode horses, mini bikes, bicycles, had a great time. Graduated from Garner Senior High School. But as far as my background in music, in all honesty, I have no professional training at all or no vocal training. I had two teachers where you're going to talk about the show a little bit later, but every time I rehearse in that auditorium, I think about Miss Bethel, who was the music teacher for chorus during the time that I was there in elementary. But I really didn't get impacted or changed by music until middle school. I was kind of clowning around in the hall. And during that era, you and I both know that if you got in trouble, everybody knew, your parents, like by the time you got home, your parents already knew because your teacher or somebody in the neighborhood, because everybody was so closely knit. So I was kind of clowning around, and Miss Emma K. Bird kind of caught me in the hallway. And so she looked at me very sternly and said, "You need to be in chorus." Well, first I was relieved because I wasn't in trouble, but that to me was the beginning of a change in my life in its entirety. I started singing in the chorus, but she took special attention to me. She would take me to her home and help me prepare for competitions. So she would train me, and when I say train, my memory, thankfully, is pretty sharp. So what she would do is beat out the keys of a particular song that I was using to compete, and I could remember it. And at that time, I was a very sharp first soprano. And so she would literally go through the song just over and over repetitively so that I could remember how it needed to go for competition. And that's how she would position me to compete for different things. So I won several awards. And from that point forward, I just fell in love with not so much as a gift, but the experience that when I was given the opportunity to share my gift of what was going on with me at that time, and what this exchange that took place between me and the audience. So things just kind of began to happen. I went to Fayetteville State University, and I didn't like it there. And so I ended up coming back home and working, and then started a family. And so all along, different things were kind of just happening, word of mouth, opportunities. So it just kind of, it was destined for me because I didn't have any type of manager. I was reading books like This Business of Music and trying to learn as much as I could about being a performer and those kinds of things. But I just started, opportunities started presenting themselves. And so I just started going from there.
Mhm. And and you perform mostly in the gospel tradition. Is that fair to say?
That's very fair to say. Yeah, I come start with the spirituals, which are just coming up out of the South. Those all of those songs came out of the South, and then migrated, or and as my grandma often said, from her mouth to my ears. So these songs were just transmitted orally throughout African American our culture in terms of the interpretation of the songs and how they were passed. So I do sing only gospel, even though Tim tells me all the time I could make a boatload of money singing the blues. I'll stick with what I know.
So you do travel. We're going to talk a bit in a minute about your work with Tim with Dr. Tyson, and you did eventually go. You went and got a bachelor's degree in American Studies from UNC Chapel Hill.
I did.
Uh-huh.
I did, and I love the way that the way you posed the sentence or the question you when you sent me the questions. I like the way you posed the question, but it was kind of flipped. The life that I was already living, life itself, is the influence that really propelled me to go back to school. I had been performing and singing all over. I had been to Las Vegas. Chicago. I've been singing gospel music. New York at not competitions. They were gospel fests.
Uh-huh.
But believe it or not, I didn't fit. I didn't fit because I was singing the music that was birthed out of slavery. So when you talk about putting me in with contemporary artists, I did not fit. So what ended up happening as I was migrating, learning more about the music of our of who we were as a people, people that came out of the tribes, the Yoruba tribe, the Igbo tribe, Wolof, that were transferred over onto this land in the bottom of a boat. As I began to research those things on my own, I understood that it was a part of folklore, African American folklore. I understood the importance of it, but I also understood, and I tell young people this all the time, I understand too, to be received and to be heard, you need your ticket. And so I was working at the Department of Social Services as a Medicaid case manager. I worked there for 30 years. And in between that, I was singing and performing for the governor, whoever was in office, for the commissioners, whatever. And I realized that because of the kind of music and because I needed to be heard, I needed to go back to school. I needed to get my degree. So I got my undergraduate in American Studies. I had and my two minors are in history and African American diaspora, and then my master's is in folklore.
Okay. And so you've been traveling, you've been performing and educating. How do you kind of blend those two, the educational piece and the performances? And you go out to different audiences. I think you go out to you reach younger students and you're reaching adult audiences. How do you make that all work?
Well, one of the good things about it is because I sing a cappella a lot of times, which I'll be doing some of that during the performance next week. But when I start talking about the music, it's so ingrained in terms of our history. You could not have had a movement without the songs. So when we learn these songs, what I ended up doing was learning how that when we place these songs in history, then I actually set it up telling the historical context. And then I literally start after I set the song up, then I begin. They say that freedom is a constant struggle. They say that freedom is a constant struggle. They say that freedom is a constant struggle. Oh Lord, we've been struggling so long, we must be free. That song was used in the civil rights movement. And as they did stand-ins, sit-ins, and sometimes the marches, they would use that. But they talked about the struggle of freedom. And in that, as they were persevering through all the different types of opposition, the freedom struggle, then we're struggling so long, we must be free. So what I do is I incorporate the music. It's interwoven in my lecture. And then what I do when I can't do it now on the social, on these mediums now, because different internet and all these different kinds of issues that are delaying sometimes what we may say, or when our community is involved. So, but I get the audience to sing along with me. So I'm not just performing, but I give them an opportunity to have this exchange, understanding that this song built a community, these songs built communities. So when you're in that room, when you're standing there or trying or marching or whatever the situation, those songs were such a way of protecting and guarding and helping against the oppressive issues or times that they were faced with. So that community was built. Well, the same thing happens in our classroom, or if I'm in Paris or wherever I may be, when the audience begins to have this exchange, when we begin to have this exchange with each other, then that community is built.
That's great. And I do want to jump in because maybe I think maybe I neglected to mention this at the outset, but you will be performing a GPAC from home concert next week. We're recording this on January 14th. It will be January 21st, Thursday evening, January 21st at 7 p.m. And folks can tune in for free virtually by going to the Garner Performing Arts Center Facebook page, where it will be live streamed. It will also be live streamed, I believe, on the town's YouTube channel. Again, you can search Town of Garner to look for that. And we'll have some information about that in our YouTube and Facebook posts that we put out about this. And you know, gosh, you've been all over the world. I heard you reference Paris, and what are some of the what are some of the surprising things you've learned from audiences' reactions, and some of the inspiring things, some of the things that really stand out to you?
One of the things let's just start with what stands out. What stands out is that how important this music is and how much it's needed in the times in which we live. That it is not lost, and how it is so important to apply it because of the times in which we live. Um, Things that have surprised me is I've everybody knows Tim Tyson, so Tim is white, and everybody knows that. Some people think he's not, but he is. And and but one some of the things that have surprised me is that when he and I travel together and we do presentations, the response that I've gotten from people before he and I do our lecture. I'll lecture and do the music and talk about this community and what we're trying to establish. And then he'll talk about his book entitled Blood Doesn't Sign My Name. What happens is this opposition that he and I are often confronted with, or more so me, in certain circles. Um, often surprised at how, after the lecture and after we've done our presentations, how that community that gets developed, it changes the whole aura or atmosphere in the room, and allows people to actually come back and literally say to me, I've heard, like, for one example, one comment was, you literally changed my thinking when it comes to African Americans. Now, I don't know what that meant. I didn't ask, but the bottom line is there was a change. Something happened. And that's what normally these conversations, that's what we want to happen. We want a change to come. So
Yeah.
I think those are the kinds of things that really kind of surprise me. But so
Yeah. So let's talk about your collaborations with Tim a little bit. Tim is a he's a history professor. Has taught at Duke. I think he's taught at is it University of Wisconsin previously.
that's right.
I don't know all of Tim's biography. I know Tim a little bit from way back, but so
Right. Remember you telling it.
he wrote the really highly acclaimed book Blood Done Sign My Name. It sort of autobiographical, and partly about some incidents that occurred in Oxford, North Carolina. Um, and it was turned into a feature film, and I believe that you had a role in that, a performance role.
Yes.
Um, but let's talk about the course that y'all have taught. It's built as sort of a community-based course that y'all teach in Durham, and it's available to students at North Carolina Central, Duke, UNC. And is it also available to, or can members of the community sign up and take the course as well?
Yeah, they can through continuing ed. They can sign up through a continuing ed at Duke. We've been teaching actually. Tim and I again traveling all over. If he were here today, he said I even took her to Iowa. But anyway, but we've traveled all over doing presentations and talking about the topic of race. And so we've done it for years now, almost 15 years. And our course really was birthed out of that. Had been traveling around in the Center of Documentary Studies. Tim was at Wisconsin, as you stated, and then hired at Duke. And then when some of the our actual at that time Tom Rankin, our who actually was the director, he sat down with us, and because he had seen the powerful effect of our presentations at different times, um, we began. He wanted us to start thinking about developing a course that would uh, do really the same thing, bringing students, community members from all walks of life and having them in one location at one time and doing a complete 13-week course. So Tim and I got together. We began to get our syllabus together and work on how to develop this, how to make this what we call patchwork quilt come together. And so when we established it, and there was the momentum behind it being established was at that time the lacrosse case.
Yes, at
Yes,
Duke. At
that's
Duke.
right, the Duke lacrosse case. So when that was in the paper and so much was going on with that, that's when we really realized that yes, this is a good time to start this course. So we taught with our opening classes were at Hayti Heritage Center in Durham, which is, I guess it's considered, well, it was a church, of course, but it was the oldest church in Durham. But the movement came out of that church, came out of Hayti. That's where the movement was. They got their marching orders during the time, so we thought it was a perfect location. So our first class, we had 350 students, our first class. And the beauty of the class was is that we had um, Vietnam veterans sitting beside undergraduates. Everybody, because we had a system where we'd have everybody, even though they came together, they had to be separated and set up where they were with people actually that they did not know. So it was a wonderful thing, and it's been going on now. We've moved our location. We're on the Tobacco campus, in the auditorium. That's where we're housed now. But it came at a wonderful time, and it's still necessary because we talk about the politics of Southern history, culture. We talk about the central thread that we often see when it comes to history, particularly coming up out of the South. And so what I do is I lecture and talk about to the students about this music that actually shines its light on every aspect, from slavery all the way up. Now, in the course, during the course, they are introduced to blues, jazz, um, of course, gospel, the spirituals, and then gospel, and this transition. So they're introduced to all kinds of music. I just perform gospel music, but they're introduced to all formats because they need to understand how this music evolved, how the blues evolved out of this burden, and so these impulses that these different genres offer. You've got the blues impulse, the gospel impulse. So how these things really are strategic in our history, and how you see that thread throughout our history. And again, it's applicable today.
Yeah. And so why do you? And this is not real, both in subject matter and in y'all's methodology, how you teach the course. It's not maybe a conventional course, or one that the kind of course that is typically offered at universities. Why would you say that this is an important addition to other university course offerings?
Well, I think our course has been successful because one thing, the beautiful mix that we have, because we also have continuing ed students, and we also have community school students like Durham Tech and Wake Tech. So you've got such a vast amount of experiences in the room. So when we start giving assignments, they actually get to, for example, one of the assignments that our students treasure is that during the assassination of Martin Luther King, they have to do an essay on what was going on in their actual hometown. So we have students from London, because it's Duke, UNC, so we have foreign exchange students. And it is amazing to have them bring back the newspaper clippings and articles attached to their essays about what went on all over this world during the assassination of Martin Luther King. Then that leads to other conversations in terms of what's going on now, and how that this fabric of a culture of so many people, how that we can build a better community. So what we're doing is like we're employing people to understand our history, because first you got to understand it. And then after they've completed the course, we're asking them to go out into their communities, and if you the term, I guess I could say, evangelize, to share this news about or this information in terms of the cultural differences, but that we're really more alike than we are different. So I think that's what makes it so informative. We give, and then we use a lot of North Carolina authors. David Shushelski, we have material from him. David Shushelski actually comes to class. We have lecturers. Believe it or not, when Franklin, Dr. I can't think of his name now, it just escaped me.
John Hope Franklin.
John Hope Franklin, he actually visited on one occasion. So we had authors from all over. We use different disciplines. They have to do oral histories, interviews, which that's a course that I teach in the summer at Duke. I teach intro to oral history. But we introduce students to that, where some of them really get the opportunity to understand that they have actually had a family member that was a part of the movement or something like that. And it's just like an unveiling. So it's really important. The reason I know it's impactful is that during the time that we were teaching at Hayti, the district attorney of Wilmington literally came to the class. At that time, his mom was one of our students, Ben David. And so Ben we worked tirelessly with Ben David and other members of Wilmington. So for 4 years, we taught the course in Wilmington, and it was titled Wilmington in Wilmington in Black and White.
Oh, and there's a lot to talk about there.
Yes, and it was.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
So it influences people. And again, we start with slavery, the emancipation. We actually start, where our South, and then we always end up with folks that are coming from a deeper South. even now. So that's how we end our course, talking about the different things that those from a deeper South are coming in and what they are facing or experiencing. It was existent here because of those that came over in the bottom of the boat. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, that's how we end up bringing in awareness as to what these issues are going on today and how history plays a part in that.
So, Mary, you work and teach at the Center for Documentary Studies at Duke, and you referenced at least one other course that you teach there. Can you tell about what all you do with the center and your teaching, and just briefly maybe about the mission of the Center for Documentary Studies?
Well, the mission of the center is really about engagement, and but it does so much in the community, and it is exactly what it says: documentary studies. So it documents through art, but through film, and there's an opportunity there through Wesley Hogan, who is just brilliant. She's just I love working with her. But it's all about breaking down barriers. I think that's really one of the main things that she is trying to really enforce with us as faculty, where we're breaking barriers, coming together as a team, and making a difference in community, making a difference in terms of what Duke University is all about. So I would say breaking barriers is probably a way to just sum it up. What I do is, again, we teach one course. I teach the South in Black and White, but in the summer, I teach a summer course entitled that's Intro to Oral History, which I enjoy so much. But oral histories are so important. If we think back historically, journalists actually, of course, always used interviews and things of people that were somehow important, whether they were actors or politicians. But the thing about oral histories is that you're talking to people within your own communities. I've had a wonderful opportunity to interview folks that actually I'm doing a blog on my website. It'll be coming up in the next month or so on quartet singers. That's a big part of African American tradition. And so my father was a quartet singer, and there are several of them that are still alive today that were, some of them were sharecroppers, and they found themselves being a part of quartet groups. So these are part of African American folklore, and these are things that are a part of the tradition of African Americans. So that's what the oral histories do. The students get an opportunity to go out and interview. I hate saying regular everyday folks, but they are just people like my mom or my grandmother, or people like that, and giving them an opportunity to share their contributions depending on the subject matter. So that's an actual part of that, and documenting is a big part of that. And so the center is all about documenting, whether it's videography, again, photographs, whatever. So it's been a pleasure being a part of something that's really evolving.
Yeah, well, that's great. And you are, well, I did have a question. I did have a follow-up question about that. So you say quartet singers. Is that tradition? Is it a cappella?
Some are a cappella and some are musicians. And so what I do is I juxtapose that to some of the greats. For example, Sam Cooke. That's actually how he got started. He came up out of that. So I have a couple of interviews with JoJo Wallace, who is traveled the entire world. I've got actually information after interviewing him that I donated to UNC Wilson's library, because as a quartet singer, not a lot of education, but the quartet style, with the just guys in their suits and musicians. Some were just vocal, where it wasn't I don't want to say it was similar to barber shop quartet, but I guess that's a good juxtaposition so people will understand what I mean. But yeah, this was a thing that was a tradition with African American families. When we got out of church on Sunday, by the time we got back home, it was at night. My mom was frying chicken and doing everything Saturday night, because after church, my dad would have to meet the guys, and there was some program here in Wake County or Johnston County where they had to go and they had to sing. Were they getting paid? No. But did they love it? Yes. And so it's a big part of it. And so we've got people like Mr. Swade Exum, who's still alive, my father, John Dobbin, still alive, and they sang with there were groups like the Highway QCs, and so these were guys that were emulating national recording artists. They never recorded a record. They never were on the radio, but they had what they needed, and it gave them such dignity. Some of them didn't have a lot of education, but the music and what it did for the audiences and how it brought the African American community together and how it allowed them to know who they were and identify. It was a way of identifying. So my blog, I'll be putting that up a little bit later, but I've got several interviews. But the students, back to the students, they get an opportunity to choose a topic. We'll make what we normally do at the beginning of class is choose a topic. After they do that, then I give them all the fundamentals in lecturing, how that they need to go about it, the different things, the aspects of getting an interview, and then they have an option. It is remarkable for students that come from that are foreign exchange students. They are blown away because one of my students actually shared with me that she's from Japan, and she was very nervous when the course opened, because she said in their culture, when it comes to education, the students cannot have discourse in the classroom, that they have to sit and just receive the information. And so she was afraid she was going to fail, because she was like, I can't do this because this is not a part of our culture. And so she was so excited and did such a great job with her interviews, and it just made a big difference. It made a big difference after she got an opportunity. It gave her an opportunity to understand more about us, and as far as North Carolina and our culture.
That's really cool. That's a great story. You're working on a play about Mahalia Jackson. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Um, I well, I hesitate to ask, but I reckon I probably have to ask you to tell us briefly, talk to us about Mahalia Jackson. I think maybe some of our younger viewers or listeners in particular might not know as much about her. So tell us a bit about her, and then why you decided to do a play based on her life and work.
Okay. Well, first of all, Mahalia is my all-time favorite. All-time favorite. I don't even know why this passion to learn about her, and I don't even know where it came from. I truly don't. I just know that as far as I can remember, I've loved Mahalia Jackson. Um, so as far as her backdrop, she was her mother died when she was very, very young, and her father was a barber and a preacher. And she ended up having to go live with an aunt as a cleaning woman. She did laundry, and she would go to churches because of course that was a part of her culture, and she would literally just stand up and just belt songs. But her voice, there are journals written that talk about it was like her voice, like the building was shaking uh, because of the power of her voice. It was so infectious. But what she began to do is, as she began to travel and become more recognized, she became a major role, played a major role in the movement, a major role. Mahalia Jackson was very wealthy. She owned several salons. She owned a florist, and she was a performer. In one of her books, it says that they would hire her to sing at funerals a lot. She would do the hair of the deceased and provide the flowers for the funeral. And then perform. So
Wow.
she was making money from all levels.
One-stop shop.
Yeah. So anyway, Mahalia would when she became involved in the movement, she would give financial support constantly. But one of the beautiful things about Mahalia is that through her opportunities, like when Martin Luther King came on the scene, they became close, and he literally um would literally call her, especially during bouts of depression. He would call her and to talk to her, and she would literally sing to him on the phone. And she would just give money to support whatever the movement needed. If you listen very closely to the March on Washington, the documentary or the audio, if you listen very closely, Mahalia sang one of the open songs. I'm gonna move on up a little higher, meet my friends and loved ones. Move on up a little higher. She sang that song during the march. Well, that song had a twofold meaning. When the song was written, the writer of the song, which was Herbert Brewster, wrote the song for Marian Anderson, but her voice just couldn't do it like Mahalia. But when Mahalia got the song, she understood the entire concept. Brewster had said that if that people would hear messages through song sometimes better than through a speech. And when he wrote the lyrics to that song, he wanted Black people to know you're going to move on up a little higher in education, move on up a little higher in our culture, move on up a little higher. And that was what he wanted to provoke in the listeners. Well, after she sang that song at the Lincoln Monument, she sat down kind of behind Martin Luther. He had come to the podium. He was speaking. He had already started speaking. When he started speaking, everybody could feel, or he could feel, the audience was leaving him.
Uh,
That it was like what he was saying,
wow.
it wasn't grasping. You can hear her in the background saying, "Tell him about the dream, Martin. Tell him about the dream." And that's when he immediately started talking, giving the I Have a Dream speech, which he had given in Rocky Mountain, North Carolina prior to that.
Yeah, that's an amazing piece of history.
Yeah, she was
Um,
very influential.
Yeah. What do you think her music and her life have to say to us today, right now in this present moment?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's saying the same thing, that these cultural differences, that the white supremacy, the racism, that we need to leave those things at the door. In Carnegie Hall, when she was singing at Carnegie Hall, because she sang for presidents, as you well know, Mahalia, her voice was just a unique gift. She sang at jazz festivals, somewhat like myself, just sticking to the gospel, but understanding that that is the music that gives life. Understanding that one of her quotes is that it keeps you looking upward. It's not like the blues. She always says it's something that it talks about the bottom, and it doesn't give you the light. You're not looking up. But she said the gospel encourages you to look upward. So when people would go in, it was segregated. A lot of the concerts were segregated. But when they came to see her performances, they would sit with each other. Sometimes one audience would not leave to allow the next audiences to come in because they were so enraptured by her voice. So, what was important for her was for a body of people to come together. That was very, very important. And I think that her music did that to people. It was something about this release that came up out of her that was so infectious. It allowed people to think and really be changed, because you're dealing with them not just mentally, but you're dealing with them emotionally. So I think that that will be the message today. We've got to lay down our differences and come together as a people and build a community that is truly representative of who we are.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to turn and talk briefly about you worked in some film. Now, you worked on the film version of Tim's Blood Done Sign My Name. What did you do there?
I was in the movie. I had several roles in the movie. I was with Nate Parker, Layla Rashad. So I got a chance to be in the film, but I also did the soundtrack. So when you hear a lot of the music, that's me. Some of the freedom songs during the marches, that's me. So I'm on the soundtrack. And then I did a film for Lifetime. I did a cameo for a Lifetime film entitled "The Wronged WRONGED Man," and so I did a cameo performance there. So it's been great. It's been awesome.
And now next you're going to be at Garner Performing Arts Center. So let's talk about that. And you are going to be collaborating with Neil Padgett, whom some of our listeners and viewers will know as the former president of our Chamber of Commerce. Neil's active in his church, and he's also a pretty accomplished musician. So do you want to talk about the collaboration that y'all are working on? And again, that is going to be next Thursday, January 21st, 7 p.m. virtually. Folks can tune in live for free on the Garner Performing Arts Center Facebook page and check that out. So tell us about that collaboration.
Well, it's been wonderful. It's been absolutely wonderful. But it was so funny because Neil comes in with really prepared. He gives me all these music sheets because we talked on the phone, and when we decided we're going to each do a segment. So he'll have like a 15-minute segment. I'm going to do what I do in the classroom. I'm going to do a small lecture of about 15 minutes with music incorporated. And then our final, the last part of the show, we're doing a portrait of Mahalia. Um, which when I told him about that, he got really excited. And so, which that he all he had to, I mean, when he said he was excited to do some of our music, I'm like, hey, yeah, I'm all in. So, but I am not vocally trained. I don't know any music. So, and Neil is trained. I mean, like really trained. And so it's been, we have really come into a place where I was telling him Tuesday, we rehearsed on Tuesday, and I was like, he's really coming into, we're coming into this groove, the two of us, where we've got connected now, because I'm not trained, and because of the way my culture is in terms of when the music comes up out of me, there is no song without the human body, right? There's no song without the human body. And so when a song comes up out of me, an elderly lady, she was really about 100 years old when she told me this, but she said, Mary, if it doesn't affect you, it's not going to affect anybody else. It's not going to affect the listeners. So in my song selection, I've made sure that we've had those kinds of songs. So it's been a birthing between the two of us because I don't go by the book. I don't play by the musical rules. I just sing on how it fits me at the moment. And so it's been a wonderful collaboration because he's learning me, I'm learning him. Kevin will be doing the bass, stand-up bass. He's wonderful, very young man. He's a public school teacher, but plays the stand-up bass professionally also. But we have come into this niche, and it's very exciting. We've been having a ball in rehearsals. We really, really have. He's learning that I don't know what I'm doing, so it works because that way he kind of like, oh, okay, she's gone here. Okay, gotcha. So I kind of go off the grid, but it's all right.
That's cool. That's probably a good learning experience for Neil too. We know how he's always super prepared, and
Yes,
so to maybe pull him
yes,
out of his comfort zone a little bit, it's probably been great for him.
yeah. You're exactly, yeah. You know it. It really did. It took him out because when I told him, I said, well, I'm going to use the all the stuff you gave me, but I use the lyrics, but I have no idea. And so and one of the things about musicians is that for me, because of the way that I sing, he's pliable, so it's been working. It's been working out really well. I'm very excited, and I'm looking forward to Thursday, and I hope everybody will join us. It's going to be a great show.
Great. And again, that is, we are recording on January 14th. It will be a week from today on January 21st. That's a Thursday evening, 7 p.m. live stream on Garner Performing Arts Center's Facebook page. You'll also be able to find it on the Town of Garner's YouTube channel if you want to go there and find it. But it's been so great talking with you, and we're so proud that you're a Garner resident and representing Garner all over the world, it turns out.
Yeah. Well, thank you all again, Rick, for having me. It's been great talking with you. I try to make sure that people know that I'm from Garner. It's ironic that when I go places, they always, because I teach at Duke, I guess, but everybody always says when I correct them and say I am from Garner, they're like, oh, I thought you were from Durham. I was like, no, I am from Garner. I'm very proud of my hometown.
That's great. We appreciate that, and yeah, keep spreading the word. I did want to mention, so your website, if folks want to learn more, it's marydwilliams.com. Is that right? Mary D. Williams, all is one word. Just type it in, marydwilliams.com. Is that where folks can find your blog posts as well?
They can find the blog posts there. They can actually order music from there, CDs, if they'd like. They can order CDs from there as well.
Great.
Yeah, I do have a CD entitled Blood Done Sign My Name.
All right. Well, there you have it. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and I hope we get to meet in person once we get past all this COVID mess.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. But until then.
Until then, take care. Be well. Well, folks, that was it for this episode of Garner Station. You can check it out wherever you get your podcasts, and you can find other past episodes, and you can also find the recordings on our YouTube channel, Town of Garner. Thanks, Mary. Take care. Be well. Look forward to seeing the performance next week.
Thank you. Make sure you get back with me. Let me know what you think.
All right. Will do. Take care.